Welcome to the MA User Experience Design Open Evening, and I'm just going to get started if that's okay. Hi, my name's Alistair Steele. I'm the current course leader for MA User Experience Design, or MA UX for short, at London College of Communication, or LCC. I'm sure you already know that LCC is part of UAL. MAUX is a postgraduate degree that sits in the design school alongside other postgraduate degrees in interaction design, service design, and illustration. I'm the current course leader, and that means I do a lot of the teaching. I've taught on the course since day one and contributed to its development with Dr. John Fass over the last 5 years while we've been building it up. So I'm responsible for recruiting the teachers and I run tutorials and seminars as well. So if you're doing the course, you'll be seeing me, seeing my face and hearing my voice a lot. Why am I saying this? Just maybe to let you know that it's not the case that you don't see the course leader. The course leader does do a lot of the delivery of the teaching. This presentation is going to take about 30 minutes, and after that, you have a chance to write some questions in the chat, which I can then answer for you. I'm also going to be joined by one of our current students. His name is Slavi, and perhaps we can have a bit of a student perspective as well. First things first, MAUX is a 45-week course. We start in October and the course finishes the following December. We run 5 units: UX Studio Practices, Collaborative Unit, 2 units more or less in the middle, which we call Macro UX and Micro UX, and a final major project. I'm going to talk a little more in a bit more detail about those units in a moment. On this slide, you can see the course diagram. The numbers that you can see are weeks. So you can see that the first unit is a 40 credit unit, UX Studio Practices, and that takes us from October to Christmas. Then we run 2 units. This is the one that we're working on right now, Macro UX, and that's in this current term, the spring term. So we run Collaborative Unit and Macro UX. Then in the summer term, 2/3 of the term is called Micro UX, that's 40 credits. Then we start the final major project work that is interrupted by the summer break, and then you can come back in October to finish the degree. The course usually ends in the first week of December. So I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about the individual units. Not a huge amount, but hopefully a little bit more detail to give you an idea. The purpose of the first unit, UX Studio Practices, is a little bit to do with what we call deprogramming. We do have a lot of applicants that think that UX is all about apps and websites. For us, it isn't at all. We use this unit to think about the design of sensory human experiences. So this year, for example, students worked on briefs that were 2 weeks long. So we did 5 projects over the course of 10 weeks, which included the user experience of mold, the user experience of hair, the user experience of birdsong, and the user experience of disguise. What we're trying to do with this unit is open our minds to what we're really talking and thinking about when we say the word experience and user experience. In the springtime, in the current term, we do a collaborative unit. Everything that we do on the course is collaborative, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this as we go through the presentation. The collaborative unit itself, we run over 2 weeks, and then we go into the current unit, which we're doing now, which is Macro UX. We're working with 4 external partners at the moment: AXA, a global insurance company; Southwark Council, one of London's most diverse and fast-changing local boroughs; Takram, a design agency with studios in Tokyo and London; and Creative Conscience, which is a not-for-profit organisation that aims to inspire designers and the creative industry to apply their talents to socially valuable projects. During the macro unit, students are divided into groups of 4, and each of them works with one of these partners. Then we start the summer term. We run another 40 credit unit. If you recall, the UX of studio practices at the beginning of the year is 40 credits. Well, this is another 40 credit unit. We have another 4 external partners. Past partners on micro UX have included BBC Sounds, Gumtree, the classified ads website, the V&A, so that's the Victoria and Albert Museum here in London, and RGA. If you look at the words that are associated with this unit, we might be going a little bit deeper in our thinking about how we do our design work. So systems thinking, the ethics and responsibilities of designers, how we think about process, how we synthesize information, and how we tell the stories of that synthesis, for example. But before the end of that term, we end the unit and we start the final major project, and that is independent study. So if you wish, you can work alone for your final major project, known as the FMP for short. Lots of students choose to carry on collaborating. We had some really fruitful ones last year. There were groups of 3 or 4 students working together for their final major project. So that starts before the summer, and then it's interrupted by the summer break. We don't teach then, and then we come back and we see you at the beginning of October, when you're finishing off your final major project towards the end of the course. The FMP is a 60 credit unit, and the final grade classification that you get for your degree is based only on the work from the final major project. Okay, some examples of thinking about UX. This is a very famous diagram. Some of you may know it. It's done by Jesse James Garrett, who incidentally was one of our invited speakers at our course symposium in 2021. What he indicates in this diagram is something significant for us in UX, which is that UX is an integrated and a convergent discipline. It includes the visual, the spatial, the behavioral, the embodied, sound design, the design of voices, and the design of behaviors. So although this is from 2000 and over 20 years old now, some of these things perhaps, and some of these things are perhaps no longer quite as valid or used as they were, but certainly we still see this vertical integration in design and competencies that takes place in user experience design. These are 2 types of contrasting examples that follow of what we think of as UX on the course. On the left, you see a bit of packaging design. But what's really happening here is an unboxing experience. And I think what's so clever about it is that the speaker is tilted towards you, so you see the front, where the sound comes out, when you open the box, rather than the controls on the top. And on the right, you see TransferWise, now just called Wise. I think what's really clever about the UX here is that when you're transferring money, what do you want to know? Well, you want to know exactly what you're sending and what exactly the recipient gets. So you can see that they prioritize that part of the interaction. Here are some great examples of terrible UX designs. Again, quite well known. On the left, you see Microsoft Word with all possible panels expanded, and you can see how the actual space where you do your work is less than a centimeter high on the screen. And on the right, the crazy idea of stirring your food and then taking the lid off the pan with the spoon, leaving you with some really difficult tidying up to do. And what's going on here in many cases is on the left, what's known as feature bloat. Let's just add in some more stuff that we think people will want. And on the right, I'd argue what's happening is they haven't really done much observation or thinking about how people use things and what they actually do in the kitchen. Okay, so design, or one important question for us is, well, what is design? And for us, it isn't really post-it notes. In fact, post-it notes are banned on MAUX. There are no apps, no drones, no post-its, certainly in the first term. And we're cautious about AR and VR. In fact, allowing technology to lead experience seems risky to us. You know, perhaps technology is a tool rather than an answer. Instead, we may maybe place our attention on thinking about design as a process. Again, that's quite important in UX, where very often user experience designers stop before the final product is implemented or is taken into technical manifestation. So the process is super important. Design is a professional discipline. There are plenty of workplaces and jobs in UX, but design is also a form of critique. And although UX hasn't really been thought of very much in this context, we certainly think of it in that way on our course. How do we use UX as a language and to critique the things that we see around us? And UX design is also a cultural form of its own, a very young one. So perhaps it doesn't have the same kind of history as, say, graphic design or furniture design or something like that. But certainly it is a cultural form of its own. And that means that it has responsibilities, perhaps to communicate in ways that contribute to a culture rather than extract or take away from it. One of the big differences between an undergraduate degree and a postgraduate degree is perhaps the depth and level of research that you would be expected to do. Certainly not using post-its, as seen in this picture. You'll see a contrasting image in a minute. So so we would think that it's not perhaps sitting at your desk that you would do, or clicking around Google or around the UAL library even, but by the actual doing of research in the real world. So this is the research through design movement, which is now quite well established, and that is through the doing of design itself that research is enacted and knowledge is generated. Of course, master's level research might involve doing all of these things at once and developing a theoretical understanding of research methods and research paradigms. What else do we think about research as well? After you've done your master's degree, what might be next if you want to carry on? So you might think about doctoral research or PhD work. There is user research, fairly standard. It's fairly standard in UX to be talking to people about how they use things and how they do and think about things, even their feelings, attitudes, and opinions. So we're often asking, what is research? And the simple answer is curiosity plus rigor. The question that we're often asking is what's going on here? And the way that we find out about the things is required to be rigorous. That is structured and systematic and reportable. And here you see a person doing research in the field, literally in a field. But that usually just means being where people are rather than staying in the studio or staying at your desk or at home. It means working with people and developing an understanding of context. This is so often missing from interaction design and user experience design. It's quite shocking. We see designs over and over again that display that the designers have not really thought about what's going on around this thing. Where are the people? What language are they speaking? On MAUX at the moment, our timetable is fairly intensive. We run a seminar every Monday. We run online tutorials every Tuesday. We don't teach on a Wednesday. We're in the studio in person on a Thursday, where we have presentations and crit sessions. That is face-to-face feedback. And on Fridays, we do skills acquisition. So we're busy. And at any one moment, your research might be taking the form of exploring software, how to compose music, or design a rave. Anyway, I'll move on to the next one. There are many studios and workshops and other specialist facilities in LCC. That's one of them. I think it's one of the most amazing things about the place. There are so many different courses and disciplines on offer at the university. These are some of them. So the 3D workshop is where you would make something three-dimensional. So we have some MAUX students at the moment. They're making a mobile immersive kaleidoscope, which they will take out into the streets in person, for instance. The Creative Technology Lab, or CTL as we call it, that's a place where they have VR facilities, microprocessors, physical computing, Arduino, electronics, mechatronics, and so on. Our students are often working in there to fulfill their briefs and do their design work. Then we have the canteen and type cafe. They're social spaces where you can meet, eat lunch, have a cup of coffee. There's the college shop, highly recommended. It's small but extremely well stocked. The course has an account there, so we can buy materials for the students as they need them. Then there's the digital space. I think that's where this image is from. That's where you might do software training. There are gallery spaces where student work is shown, and the MA UX and all postgraduate exhibitions or exhibits are usually in December. So you'd be showing your work in a physical gallery and also online. The kit room is where you can borrow technical equipment. So we just borrowed a set of speakers, for example. Then in terms of library services, we have a dedicated course librarian. His name is Terry. He's amazing. If you can't find things or you want to find things, he points you in the right direction. You can book photography students, photography studios. You can do printing. And this is, I think, one of the great things about UAL in general, and certainly LCC in particular, that all of these resources are available to you. And let's have a look. And these are the people who teach on the course. You met me. My name's Alistair Steele. Then there's Dr. John Fass. He's the senior lecturer. He wrote the course, and we've been working together closely, building it since it started in 2018. He is currently, when he's not with us, working as a UX design consultant on a contract for the World Health Organization, amongst other things. Tanisha Child is a lecturer on the course who excels at working with physical materials. And so it's the three of us who are the contracted staff. The other three names, you can see there are what's called associate lecturers, and we see a lot of them. It's very much a collaborative and team effort. So Steph runs workshops and projects. She's a composer and a musician. Greg comes in usually in the final term. He's an artist and a maker who designs and builds amazing installations, as well as giving very useful and supportive tutorials. And one is with us regularly through the next two terms. I'll mention Wan Lee a little bit again in a moment. We're all well aware of the diversity in the student group and the need to have a diversity of voices in the teaching team. So it remains the case that UX is a booming industry, and this is one page of something like 50 pages of UX jobs in one city in London. Every single day people are hiring. Specifically at the moment, there's been a big hiring wave, and certainly London has a very vibrant UX industry, perhaps the biggest in Europe. We've got good contacts with UX companies in other countries, so in Scandinavia, Germany, France, Netherlands, and certainly London provides us with a lot of opportunities. Internationally, I'm sure you're aware UX is booming, more in some places than others, and the course is extremely international. We have really good insight from the nature of design at the design industry in India, in China, in Brazil, just as an example, through our students and through our various partners abroad and in the UK. So how do students on this course work with others? Who do they work with? You know, how does this reflect a real world environment? I think, you know, this is all about internal collaboration, and it's a key aspect of the course that you're encouraged to work with a range of different people. Over time, you'll probably work with every single person on the course. You'll collaborate with people outside the course, experts and other students. So it's really important to both take responsibility and show professionalism in the way that you work with others. And although we're very keen that, you know, we should help people in doing that, I think it's something that you can only learn by doing it as well. So we offer support and guidance, but we can't do it for you. We're really connected to industry. We have very good connections. We've worked with all of these companies and many more. In fact, actually, they're not all companies. For example, the Tactical Technology Collective is an information activist NGO in Berlin. Extinction Rebellion, which you may have heard of. We work very closely with them and have good personal contacts with the founders and the designers. Green Lab is a biodesign NGO. Again, it's a social enterprise. Some of these companies, maybe you've heard of IBM. RGA is a global agency. The V&A is a huge museum in London. So that's the Victoria and Albert Museum. And then there's the BBC. We work with research groups at UCL and Fjord, which has now become part of Accenture. Culture Mile is a smaller cultural organisation. So I suppose one of the reasons for including that is to indicate that there's a range of scales at which we would work with external partners. You would be doing 2 big projects with an external partner, and then we have that collaborative unit where you have 2 separate weeks of working also collaboratively. They're both with external partners as well. So there's a lot of contact with the design industry and having access to agencies and companies. This is one of the main benefits of being in London, I think, and coming to study with us. So I mentioned some of these qualities a bit before. This is sort of in part in response to the question, what are we looking for in a student? They're often not the things that applicants or students think they are. So we don't really need you to have advanced technical skills. Instead, we do need you to be curious about acquiring them and wondering about the world around you and where design opportunities exist. And rigorous, that means being careful. It means being systematic. It also means being informed theoretically. It means acting responsibly in the world and being able to justify the decisions you make. Exploratory, well, what do we mean by that word? Well, willing to take risks. We can't really learn anything unless we're willing to fail and for things to go wrong. The worst thing that you can do is not do anything. And we're always encouraging students to go further, push the edges of the discipline, do something you've never done before, and do something surprising. You know, something that surprises yourself as much as other people. In terms of critical, I suppose that's there's something of the answer to the question, why does this thing exist? What is this design that I'm working on? What's the reason? Why should it exist in the world? So if we're doing that kind of questioning, we won't be doing taxi hailing apps or pizza delivery apps. We sort of feel that the world doesn't need any more of them. Instead, we think about, well, what does the world need and how should we respond to those needs as designers? Here are some examples of recent student work. These are recent graduates. They graduated in December. The website is at the bottom here. Yeah, I'm just checking I've still got it. So that's our live course website. All the students' names are on there since the course started, and there's a lot of student work visible. These are FMP or final major projects. So for example, just looking here, Path, he worked on a collaborative project with 2 other students, Bala and Jacob, and they explored how to make parish council meetings. Parish councils are the smallest type of local authority in the UK. So their goal was to make those meetings more democratic. They worked with 3 different parish councils. Then there's Meta, top left, made a punk mixtape that introduced international travellers to London's historic punk subcultures through a self-guided tour that was an actual mixtape with hidden clues. But I think she actually taped to the underside of a stool in a pub at one stage for people to discover. Mubani's project was a neighbourhood collective memory archive made of using a smell toolkit that she designed herself. So you can see there's a degree of variety there. Some graduate stories. So on the right in this image here, you can see one. That's one Lee. She graduated from our first cohort, now I guess 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. And she's now a lecturer with us. Every year we try to encourage recent graduates, maybe not immediately just graduated, but to get involved in the teaching of the course. I think we're going to be visited by some of the recent graduates on Thursday, who'll help with a review. Deepika, she went off, she got a job in Germany, and then she just came back to London to work for HSBC. Masha did an amazing FMP that was with a dementia care home in Slovenia, and they hired her to implement her design work for real. And Constance is also now working in the London UX industry, and she's been at least 3 different agencies. But I think she started as an intern with one of the companies that was an external project partner. So there is a direct route, so an external project partner on the course. So there is a direct route from working as a student with a project partner to maybe doing an internship or finding employment with them. These stories are also visible on the other MAUX website, which is the UAL one, which describes the course structure and the application procedure in a bit more detail. Applications. To make an application, you have to provide your personal details. So we need to know your current or previous education, your employment history as a CV, a personal statement, a portfolio, and a study proposal. Perhaps the most important of these is the personal statement and the portfolio. In order to process the application, you will have to have all the other things. There are 2 application deadlines in the year, and I'm hoping that Miranda will correct me if I've got these wrong, but I think the one that has just passed was on the 19th of December 2022, and we've got one coming up on the 3rd of April 2023. Having this happen in 2 distinct phases allows us to manage the volume of applications coming into MAUX. I think we're the top recruiting postgraduate course in the whole of UAL. Apart from MAGMD, Graphic and Media Design. Well, what does that mean? That means we have, last year, over 900 applications for 35 places. First of all, that's great for us because we can really find some fantastic students, but it does mean that we're a difficult course to get onto. Excuse me. What is a portfolio? It's a collection of work. It should have a minimum of 5 projects. At least 2 of those should demonstrate some engagement with digital technologies. The ones that stand out at application have 2 main qualities. I can't stress this enough. Number 1, they show that a student has done something real. So we're not trapped in the flat land of cell phone screens and iPads and laptops, but instead there's some 3-dimensional work that doesn't necessarily mean product design. It could also be located as spatial, or it might be embodied or wearable. But we want to know where technology and your designs touch the physical world. And number 2, also that applicants have worked with some actual real people, not cartoon versions of people or library pictures or idealized versions of people, but some actual real people. This image shows a student response to a brief from 2 years ago, which was the UX of skin. And we love this because it's very real, and by making something like this, it allows us to talk about haptic, tangible, and sensorial qualities of skin, and how that might inform design. Your personal statement, it's an opportunity for you to demonstrate a little bit about how you think, what your interests, what are you interested in, and why do you want to do this course? Again, that's another one that's super important. Is there a particular part of design that you're interested in? So it's a real chance for you to let us know how you think about things. So we're interested, for example, in what you've been reading and the ideas that inform your work, things like that. And also, if you have interest outside of traditional design, but it connects to making, it connects to design culture, and you're passionate about it, tell us about those things. Okay, scholarships and funding. This is not so much my area. There is an area on the UAL website where this is available. And I'm sure my colleagues would be able to help you. You can see the link written in green at the bottom of the page here. So perhaps that can help. There's a postgraduate master's loan. A lot of these things are related to residency status and visa status, but there are international postgraduate scholarships as well. Please do find out about them if that's important to you. Yeah. And so that is the end of my presentation. First of all, thank you for listening. And secondly, I'm going to leave this slide up for a little bit, I think, with these email addresses so that you can refer to them. And we might refer to them in the Q&A session as well. Hopefully you can see them all. On the left, you can see Ula's work. She's a recent graduate too. So a year ago, she graduated. And it's a really nice bit of embodied design. It's not a cell phone screen, but really thinking about the shape of the body and the tangibility. And that's what we're into. So thanks for listening. Before we go to the Q&A, I'd like to introduce Slavi. He's a student ambassador for the university, but also currently studying on an MAUX, so an excellent person to ask questions about the student experience. I'm wondering, is it going to, Miranda, can you hear me still? I feel like I've been talking a long time. Marvelous. If I stop so that everyone can get a look at us, what I might then do is come back to this screen. Do you think that's okay if I stop the presentation just for a moment so that people, will people be able to see Slavi as well? Is it just a case of having the screen on? They will. Okay, great. So let me. So Slavi, I can't see you, but hopefully other people can. And perhaps you'd be kind enough just to tell us a little bit about your background and your journey into the course, and how you're finding things, really.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Al. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. So basically, I came and did undergraduate degree first in University of Portsmouth. I did graphic design, which is a bit kind of maybe the pathway to UX. Then there in the university, I managed to work also as a IT helper, where I also developed, skills for working with people, and also had the chance to work with, kind of technology websites around the university. So this kind of pushes me in that direction. The previous course was also like very research led, which kind of helped me to get onto the course. And obviously, because I was kind of devouring the materials that were available online to how to get into the course, I was trying to kind of push the boundaries, as I already mentioned here, how we're trying to be like maybe a little bit crazy, a little bit just to try to explore areas, to try and fail, which I think kind of helped me out on that one. And also just want to say for the people, I'm not sure what's your background, but I just want to encourage you that the course is very diverse. We have people from a range of disciplines, for example, starting from computer science, going to architecture, going to landscape design, also literature we have actually, so which makes it very rich. Product design. I think we have someone from chemical science related subject, so this kind of helps you to make it so kind of rich. You're getting so much rich perspectives on the course, which is really rewarding and nice. So definitely do apply, and don't feel that you cannot apply for the course and you're not qualified.
Just realized I'd muted myself. Thank you very much, Slavi. That's fantastic and a great reminder. Yes, we really cherish people from different disciplinary backgrounds and cultural backgrounds as well. What we want is a richness of conversation and discussion about what user experience design can be. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Don't be put off if you think, oh, we don't come from the, you may not come from the traditional UX route. That's not a problem. So I think maybe we can open up for questions now. Is that something that we can do, Miranda? And perhaps Slavi and I can both attempt to answer them, although it might be difficult because I can't see the questions or Slavi. So
I can read them out to you if you bear with me. So I have
that's super kind
for you. So this is a question more for Slavi actually. How much collaborate with the other students on the course?
We're collaborating all the time, which honestly I would say is amazing. I just want to, appreciate how Alistair, John, Tunisia, and all the rest of the lecturers made such a friendly environment here. I've honestly, as I've told them before, I feel like home here. You're kind of very open with all of your course mates, so definitely it's just we're collaborating on a daily basis. Everyone is just doing their part of the work. It's very dynamic. It pushes you a lot to do as well. And yeah, definitely it's amazing environment to work in and with the people that will be selected on the course.
Amazing, thank you very much. We've got another question here. Let's have a look. Can students borrow equipment for the university to complete projects?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's the section earlier on in the presentation when I was touching on, we have all of those resources. So you can borrow. I think I mentioned that we, borrowed speakers. LCC is well resourced, and what more widely, UAL is very well resourced for. You can borrow photographic equipment, all sorts of digital supplies, sound, you name it. It's very broad. Slavi, have you been able to borrow things from other particular things that have been entertaining in your explorations across UX that you've been able to borrow from the university?
Oh yeah, obviously first of all the laptops, but the more interesting things actually for us are the Arduino equipment. If actually you can borrow VR headsets and you can go quite fancy, but obviously as I mentioned, we're quite cautious of using technology as well. So it's very you can find everything you need here in terms of like creating some of these creative technological projects. So I think you wouldn't lack too much things. So you have everything you need for your project.
Amazing, thank you. I've got a question here that's maybe looking for some advice. So this person is currently finishing up a BSc in computer science at King's College London. They don't currently have a portfolio. Is it worth them putting something together, and how should they go about doing that?
I would say yes, and I think the guidelines that I gave earlier in the presentation are a good sort of loose set of guidelines, but perhaps rather than 5 specific, I mean, maybe it would be appropriate to put in some computer science projects that you have done, but then also some some other maybe self-initiated projects that you've worked on. We have someone on the course at the moment who is a DJ, for instance, and produces music. So if you have other creative aspects to your sort of broader set of work or interests, then I would encourage you to do that. I think it's difficult to get a place without some sort of portfolio, but as Slavi was suggesting, it can be quite broad. We're open, as and adding to that list, we've had philosophers, we've had archaeologists. Yeah, and as you said, we have someone who comes from a chemical science background as well. So it's a case of putting something together that maybe conveys some of your interests, but also I wouldn't discount some of your experience already. I don't know, Slavi, if there's anything that you would add to that.
Yeah, just as you mentioned, probably just try to provide, kind of show that your all-roundedness, all the skills, because even now interacting with my course mates, everyone kind of brings their unique skills. For example, even in my current group, we have people that deal with, creative computing, also 3D modeling as well, photography. We're kind of like tapping into our different skill sets that we managed to pick along the way. Some of us also good, for example, in research, we kind of lean on them as well on some stages on the project, leading with the team as well. So it's very, you can express quite a variety of skills, and I think the more the better.
Yeah, I completely agree.
That's great, thank you. We've got a question here about portfolios. Do you have an example of portfolios from unconventional routes onto the course to give an idea of what is required? So I don't know, Alistair, if you can think of anything off the top of your head that you've seen come in that's from sort of a different walk of life rather than strictly academic.
Do you know what? Someone asks me a question like that and my brain goes completely blank. But I suppose, I mean, I'd go back to some of my earlier points, which would be, for instance, if I was coming from philosophy or computer science or archaeology, you know, perhaps some of the skills that you use. I mean, we're interested in, for instance, if you've done lots of interviewing of real people as part of a research practice in the commercial world, you know, maybe some sort of graphic presentation of that, or, you know, some of the, you know, obviously depending on you know, any commercial sensitivities and so on. But yeah, we would hope to see sort of evidence of stuff you've done in the world with people. So that might be evidence of, I don't know, interview analysis, or it might be evidence of, you know, if you're an archaeologist, you know, have you been on a dig? What did you find interesting there? I'd go back to those key points of things in the world, physical things, and real people, I guess. And I suppose if I'm trying to be succinct, my answers would be, you know, if you're an archaeologist, so, you know, something that you've dug up, or, you know, if you've done a material cultures study of a particular item in a museum, you know, I would hope to see something of that in relation to objects and things and physicality. And in terms of people, yeah, something that shows us that you've dealt with real people, not just sort of notional ones.
Great, thank you very much. I've got a question about how big the classes are and sort of how big the courses is in general as well. How many students are in this year's intake?
We have 42 students, and that's at the upper end of the, you know, we aim loosely for sort of 35 to 40 students. As a general rule, we operate the class in various ways. So I don't think, I mean, I'd be interested to know what Slavi thinks about this, but we have moments where we come together for big presentations and things like that. But then we also, you know, break apart and have more smaller collaborative sessions as well. So it's not the case that it's always sort of 40 people in the room together. Often we're operating between smaller groups, like group tutorials or even individual tutorials, collaborative independent work, and then also we come together. Thursdays are our big days. They tend to be a lot of fun and quite dynamic, and depending on which week it is, we might have, as I was saying, ex-students in, we might have professionals in, people come to visit us all of the time. We do presentations on those days in the morning usually, and that tends to be everyone, and then in the afternoon we break into sort of smaller groups. I don't know, Slavi, is there anything that I've missed there in terms of how the numbers work?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything.
And how do you find it, Slavi? I mean, does it feel like too many people or not enough people, or?
Oh no, I think there's just the perfect balance, as you said, all that mixing of we coming together on Thursday, which is really amazing. You know, you kind of learning from other peers as well. The presentations definitely amazing, and then splitting up into smaller groups. I think also kind of helps, especially working between the small teams on the tasks. So yeah, I think overall it's nice, and also have like that exposure of, like, you know, having your maybe closer time, or like, you know, more personal time with some of the peers that you're getting to know them more on these small group interactions, instead of like just one big group where the interaction is a little bit harder, but still we have.
Yeah, and I think I would agree. I think the numbers, we've developed the size of the course and the teaching style over the last 5 years in response to and with the students. I think the fact that ex-students come to visit us and you know, enjoy coming back when they're not working and doing other things, and the fact that some of them, you know, a handful of them have gone on to join the staff team, is kind of is something that sort of demonstrate, well, we've learned, I guess what I'm saying is we've learned from the student body as much as sort of shaping it over the last 5 years.
Great, thank you. I have two questions that are quite similar. So the first is, how much of this program is digital / technological, and how much of it is sort of physical, hands-on building? And the next is, would you mind explaining how much of this course is related to human-computer interaction? Do we get to learn a little bit about user interface design, like web applications and different interfaces? If yes, how is this more beneficial than bootcamp courses and online certification courses? So maybe could you talk a little bit about sort of, yeah, the things that you learn on the course potentially?
Sure, really happy to. So I would distinguish us. We distinguished ourselves deliberately, and that was very much, I think, you know, John's intention when he wrote the course, and what we've done over the last, you know, 5 years or so has been to distinguish it from, you know, a boot camp. That it goes back to some of the things that were in the presentation there about we're theoretically driven. So, you know, we try and look at perspectives beyond the most sort of immediate pressing ones of I have to get a project out the door. And so we're theoretically driven, we're critical, you know, why are we designing something? Is you know, as Cedric Price said in the, I think the late 1970s, you know, if technology is the answer, what was the question? The point is we use a huge range of methods to wonder and to ask ourselves and to interrogate what questions are we asking? Why are we doing a thing? Why is it necessarily? It's not that we don't do apps or websites, and by the end there are some students who do that, but that is part of a process of critical reflection and looking at the world around us. That is perhaps in a way it's a sort of wonderful luxury that perhaps you don't get on a boot camp. So yeah, it's theoretically driven. It's if you want to learn, you know, A/B, you know, user testing, if you want to, you know, be exploring UX through wireframes, we're not the course for that. If you're looking to slide into a junior position as soon as possible, although I think now that the internet is peppered with examples of people saying, watch out, then, you know, because it's not as easy as it was at a junior level. But should that be what you want, then I wouldn't stop you. You know, I think there are excellent courses, you know, General Assembly, you know, offer a really good boot camp. What we do is much more involved. It's theoretically driven. It's much more emphasis on the physical. It asks questions about what could be, what UX could be, and it aims to push at the edges of that. So our students graduate with a portfolio of work which doesn't look like every other person who's applying to a UX company or trying to collaborate with someone else. Our students, in fact, our project partners, repeatedly say to us what they love is the new methods that our students develop, which I can say, you know, having taught on the course for 5 years, reflects the students as much as and reflects the wider student body. So it's about what you're interested in, what's you know, what's quirky and unusual, and looks to the future rather than looks to the past of UX, or the immediate past of where it's become a very narrow discipline. In terms of percentages, we don't let anyone near a post-it note or a wireframe for the first term. I mean, I think I referred to it as deprogramming that first term, and maybe Slavi can talk a bit about that. But we, you know, because he has good knowledge of some technical aspects of user experience design. But that first term, we explore a lot of qualitative methods and a lot broader range of methods than perhaps you'd find on a standard boot camp. Slavi, is there anything that you would want to say to that?
Well, I would say, yeah, honestly, the selling point for this course for me was exactly that, that you cannot find it in a boot camp or anywhere else, which is, kind of pushing you to explore things. As I already mentioned, I can also maybe give a specific example, at our current project, we are working on kind of rethinking the inclusivity around the workplace, and also, like as I mentioned, we have these seminars. We using the readings on our seminars, kind of applying that theoretical knowledge about the metaphors around the leverage points, where we can change, kind of the whole social environment. And kind of honestly, like before coming on the course, obviously I was thinking about UX as websites and apps, but now being on the course for so much time, seeing that, like, my perspective kind of opening up for thinking in such a unique way, I would say, not fixed in the boxes. And also, I would say it's kind of very rewarding and kind of like makes you look at the world in totally critical sense, I would say. So like I think kind of prepares you for like the future of UX, how it's going to look like. So definitely I would encourage, if you're not after, or if you want to kind of be one step ahead, that's the course for you.
Actually, if I could add to that, Wan Lee, who we were discussing earlier on, described it to me recently. She was saying that when she was on the course, it felt like weightlifting, that she was lifting, heavy things, but enjoying it. Afterwards, it was just, she said it felt so much easier, and she felt that she was really, she had a range of skills because she was able to apply herself to a much broader range of situations because the course had been so intensive, and she'd acquired such a broad range of unusual skills. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Can I jump in once again quickly, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I already mentioned, on the course we are, required to keep a blog website. So, I just decided to go with WordPress. But, just seeing like doing all these projects on the course kind of like made it much more easier to think about, doing these digital, like, the typical digital product design. And also another thing is that, especially now at the moment doing these briefs with partners, it's so interesting to look at different groups, how they approach their research process. And honestly, I've never been aware of such like research methods that some other groups are doing. And I'm kind of, like looking on the other groups and trying to learn from them as well while they're developing their project as well. So it's definitely a nice thing.
That's part of, if I can jump in again there, that's part of the rationale for our relationship with project partners. One of the first things we do is we say, okay, well, if you're the BBC or if you're the V&A, what would you spend more time on? So we don't treat it as a sort of apprenticeship for students with the external partners. What we do is we try and take our partners on a journey as well. And what that means is, we ask them, what is it that you worry about? What is it that you would spend more time on if you could afford to? And we invite them to sort of pose problems for the students to puzzle with and to explore, and they're difficult problems. But what that means is that when it comes to a presentation, we've got the situation that Slavi's talking about, where you've got groups of students from all sorts of disciplinary backgrounds developing all sorts of different ways to answering those questions. And at the same time, you've got a room full of very different partners. The partners that we'll have in the room a week on Thursday are from, not-for-profit, from design agency, from local government, and a global insurance company. And the different requirements that those different industries have and those different organizations have also help to serve the kind of variety, but also the collaborative nature of the course.
That's great. Thank you very much, both of you. I have got a question again for Slavi. Can you tell us a bit more about how you put together your portfolio? They say, having come from a graphic design background, which I assume was quite flat or paper screen based. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I had some of the app and website designs, but I just want to mention here that I was actually working with real people, real clients, going to them, interviewing them, applying kind of rigor in the research process. That's one of the things actually. And in my university, my previous university, we were allowed to, pick kind of these briefs set by Royal Society of Arts once, which there I on purpose, just to prepare my portfolio for this course while doing my previous course, picked a project where I could develop something three-dimensional instead of just flat. So, for example, one of my portfolio projects was actually physical information hub. We kind of thought about how it's like physical nature in the space, how the people interact around it, how we can situate it in the space. And also for my final project in my undergraduate, I was kind of wanted to kind of get that taste of this course back on mine. So I was just exploring how the materiality of the user interfaces can be expressed through, like clay. Just shaping and controlling a user interface through clay and just like reflecting around that one. So I'll just advise, look at what students have done before on this course and just explore. And like as Sal said, maybe how we go about here, just the weirder the better, like just don't be afraid to fail. If you fail, that's fine, just go document also these like learning steps. But you also have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, especially coming from graphic design background. But yeah, that's after all, that's one of the main things here as well. We're almost all the time pushed out of our comfort zone with the project that we're working on every day. So yeah, just be explorative.
Thank you very much.
I think you said, sorry, Miranda.
No, go ahead, Alistair.
I was just going to say, actually, I think something that Slavi said there that was really important is, if you're dealing with two-dimensional things, where does it live in the world is a question that we ask ourselves quite a lot. So if it's a printed item, perhaps, a sort of, you might have an image of someone turning the page or whatever, but that's not the same as seeing it, being read in a cafe or some other environment where, a library or on a plane. So I suppose, there's always a question about if you've been working in two dimensions, if someone is interacting with an app, where are they and what's the real place, not a sort of notional duplicate place, but somewhere that's actually real. So that might be a way you can adapt those sorts of apparently flat things for a portfolio.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. I've got a last question here, and it's quite a big question for Slavi again. What are your plans for after you graduate?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Honestly, I haven't thought much about it yet, but obviously, I would like to continue for user experience design roles. I've been thinking also about doing a PhD, just like carrying on exploring my final project, kind of like maybe thinking to how to position strategically myself to transition to PhD. Yeah, I would say maybe depending on how the things develop, because obviously the course is quite intensive and I have only little chances to think about after what was going to happen after graduation. But yeah, I have my two options open. Honestly, it's going to be nice if I continue working with such type of projects because they're really amazing. But also, once again, we have to come back to, see what's available on the market. But I'm sure we have like nice connections with Takram also and other companies around London. I mean, I'm sure you know more than me. So, like there's the options for you. And like you're kind of having an even broader spectrum of where you can end up. So, kind of in a way, you're just opening up your options.
What's quite nice is that we're about to have our 5th year of graduates, and there's people who have gone in lots of different directions. I believe that people have really benefited and been able to apply a lot of what they've learned on the course. That's certainly the feedback that we get.
Great, thank you. I think we've come to the last of our questions. Just in case anyone wants to get in anything under the gun, do either of you have any words of wisdom or sort of final tips for applicants?
Over to you, Slavi, I think.
I would just say document all of your experience. Just make sure you document everything. Nothing is not important. Everything it deserves the place for documentation. And just as I mentioned, just try to make physical things. So even if you're a graphic designer, coming back to this one again, just see how it's been interacted with, developed in space, how the people perceive it, what the people are feeling in that moment when they're interacting, and also reflect on that. Kind of try to do these repeated steps, and once again document all these steps that you're taking, just so you have all that material for your portfolio. Because honestly, when I was applying, I had a little bit of hard time on this one. I had to pretty much pull things that I haven't documented too well. So that's going to help you so much in like your application process or developing your final portfolio for applying to this course.
Yeah, I agree. There's a real generosity in showing mistakes and showing development. And so, yeah, I applaud that. Document, then select and edit. But yeah, document like mad.
Great. Well, in that case, thank you both very much for your time. And thank you for everyone listening along at home as well. I will now close the session. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brenda. Bye.